I knew that I was the one that ruined my arm, not them, but that was always in my mind, in my head, right? That was buried, so I never wanted to face it. So I recognized that, and I think what I was really mad was at myself, and so I was trying to numb it. And what I was doing, I was teaching baseball lessons at this time. Insane, I was out there teaching tons of baseball lessons, and I was just putting everything into everybody else, putting that identity into that, where I could be this coach and I could show all these kids all these new things, and then but on the inside, I wasn't taking care of myself. And
If you have ever looked around at your life and thought, this can't be it, you are in the right place. This is Flying Upstream, the podcast for people who refuse to live on autopilot. I'm your host, Kristyn Medeiros. Each week, I sit down with people who questioned the rules, challenged the expectations, and chose a different path. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. We talk about the moments that broke them open, the decisions that scared them, and the lives they built when they stopped doing what they were told and started listening to themselves. If you are done following the crowd and ready to trust your own way forward, stay with me. Let's fly upstream. Welcome back, free spirits, to another episode of Flying Upstream. I'm your host, Kristyn Medeiros, and today we have a guest whose story is one of resilience, identity, loss, and ultimately rebuilding a life from the ground up. Michael Bugary once looked like he was on the path to living the dream of many young athletes. He grew up in Monterey, California, earned a baseball scholarship to UC Berkeley, and was drafted by the Boston Red Sox during his junior year. But at just 23 years old, an arm injury ended his professional baseball career. Losing the identity he had built his entire life around sent him into a deep depression. He turned to opioids, then eventually heroin, trying to numb the pain of losing the future he had imagined for himself. But that was only the beginning of the challenges he would face. Not long after, Michael was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor roughly the size of a tennis ball. After surgeries, chemotherapy, and radiation, he found himself physically, mentally, and spiritually broken. Today, Michael is sober, approaching 5 years in recovery. He's a motivational speaker, author of the book, The Disease of Me, and someone who now dedicates his life to helping others who feel trapped in their own struggles. Michael, welcome to Flying Upstream.
thank you, Chris. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for that introduction too. That was nice.
Absolutely. So let's start back in Monterey. You grew up playing baseball and dreaming of making it to the major leagues. When you think back to that time, how much of your identity was wrapped up in being an athlete?
I think all of it really was. I remember a specific time when I think early on I felt like I kind of didn't fit in right before baseball, right where baseball started out, as a kid's love for a game, and I loved it, and then it soon to evolved into like my path to greatness, and I think that there was a moment where at my first high school, I had issues with some of the teammates, and the coach told me I wasn't good enough. In that moment, I promised myself that they can say a lot of things about me, but nobody will ever say that I'm not good enough again. A stranger won't say that. And so that moment, baseball, essentially an addiction, became the source of getting the things that I wanted. And so baseball became my whole identity. It was everything that I was, and I always just wanted to be a major leaguer because I felt if I just got there, I would get everything that I wanted, and I would stop having all this fear and insecurity inside of myself.
Absolutely. And I mean, you ended up earning a scholarship to UC Berkeley. And for those who don't know, UC Berkeley is an incredibly good college out here in California. And then getting drafted by the Boston Red Sox, that's the moment of a lot of young players dream about. So, what did that feel like when that opportunity became real for you?
I think yes and no. I mean, I kind of expected that, so I didn't have like that. I went through some ups and downs with it, and every time it was every time I got some success, it was always more. I needed more. So it was never once I got it, I was never really satisfied with it. Like with the Berkeley, I wanted to go to Berkeley because it was one of the crowning jewels of Northern California, and I was a Northern California guy, and I wanted to wear that California on my chest more than anything to represent California. And then, when I got drafted, I should have got drafted higher. It was just like I said, it's that addiction. I needed more of it. So it was surreal and something that I really love doing, and I'm grateful that I got a chance to do it. But it was such an addiction for me. I just had this very unhealthy relationship with it.
Yes. Well, everything changed, right? So, you were just this unhealthy obsession, and you suffered an arm injury that unfortunately ended your career at just 23. So you'd worked your entire life, your dreams come true, and then in the blink of an eye, it's done. What was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, I had made it in a point that everybody knew me for baseball. When I made that promise to myself, I didn't care if you didn't like me or not because I was in your face about it. I was abrasive, and that's the way I played, and I created this character on and off the field. I didn't care, and so everybody knew me for that. And when I lost it, when I was no longer on a team anymore, when I didn't have that means to get that validation, I was lost, and I didn't wanna think about it. I didn't wanna go outside and talk to people because I didn't wanna tell them, what had happened to me that I probably would never throw right again. When some of the doctors told me that, I just didn't know how to hear it. I didn't plan for a life after sports. I have this saying, I say, I was willing to die at 40 to play 10 years in the major leagues. That was my mindset. It was all here and now. And so when that happened, I just wanted to be alone and to numb my feelings, and painkillers and opiates and Oxycontin at the time. I mean, that works for that. It really does. And that's what I wanted to do. So I just really wanted to numb my feelings.
Yeah. Understandable. It's a huge loss of identity. Losing the sport that you've built your life around feels like losing yourself. How did the loss of identity affect you emotionally and mentally?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to like when you look back at it, it's hard to think about going through it. I just felt like I lost my self-worth. I had built my self-worth from the accomplishments that I had, right? And I think that happens to a lot of elite level athletes when they get to this level is that their performance dictates how they feel about themselves. Right. And if I can no longer perform or I no longer have a means or a goal to achieve, like when I was told that I couldn't throw again, I just went through this insane, like unhealthy cycle of I'm gonna prove them wrong and then getting hurt again, and then going to addiction again, then proving them wrong again, finding that motivation until eventually it got to a point where I got the heroin, like you said, and then I had no capacity to care about anything else. So it just broke me from the inside, from my identity. I just didn't know who I was. Right. It was very challenging.
So, as you were going through this time with the opioids and heroin to cope with that pain, at that time, did you recognize what was happening or did it just feel more like survival mode?
Yes, both. Right? Because there's always that inner truth, right? The truth that's buried so deep under layers of denial, right? Because blame and anger are so much easier than taking responsibility, right? Like when I was going through my recovery and rehabilitation with my arm, I wasn't taking it seriously. I was out partying. I was out abusing my medication at the time that I had, and I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. And I knew that I was the one that ruined my arm, not them. But that was always in my mind, in my head, right? That was buried. So I never wanted to face it. So I recognized that, and I think what I was really mad was at myself, and so I was trying to numb it. And what I was doing, I was teaching baseball lessons at this time. Insane, I was out there teaching tons of baseball lessons, and I was just putting everything into everybody else, putting that identity into that, where I could be this coach and I could show all these kids all these new things, and then but on the inside, I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was just, in my alone time, it was just how do I stop this from going, and that's what substances did. Yeah, well, I think there's a saying is the secrets keep you sick, right? And I think the things that no matter what they are, everybody has them, and there's always one thing that I'll take to my grave, or there's the two things, you know what I mean? I'm never gonna tell anybody, or the real, like I was just saying earlier, like the real blame. And honesty to me means, hey, I'm not telling everybody what's unfiltered on my mind. What it means to me is that I accept who I am. I'm flawed. My thinking is flawed. Like my first thought in my mind is crazy, and I know that, and I'm not perfect. I'm a flawed human being, and as long as I can honestly accept that, then I can accept you. And when I can accept you, I live outside of the disease of me that I have. So that's what honesty means to me is just, hey, acknowledging that, accepting me for me. And and that's not easy to do sometimes, but I know that I really have accepted that I don't know everything, and I'm pretty much wrong all the time, and my first thought is not what I need to go with.
I mean, that's a big step, like, to be able to say that now considering what you've been through, just acknowledging for a minute, the journey and how far you've come, you know?
Thank you. Yeah,
Um, yeah. And okay, so then you're going along, and
yeah,
then came another major turning
yeah,
point in your life. You're diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor.
yeah.
What do you remember of hearing that diagnosis?
Oh, man. I don't remember much. When I speak, I share this moment when I first was with my mom, and she had flown in from California. I was in Arizona at the time, and she was sitting in the chair next to me while the doctor was writing on his whiteboard the percentages of my chances to live, the percentage of what this treatment's going to do. Just all this doctor talk that I didn't quite understand. But and not once did I look at my mom and wonder what she was going through. She had just put me through treatment. She had just now I had brain cancer. Wasn't really thinking about her. I was thinking about, hey, I'll get through it. I'm gonna get some good drugs now from the hospital, and I'm not gonna have to work hard for it, right? That's the insane way that I think. I don't think about anybody else, and and to be honest with you, I was, like I said, I was so mad at this point in time. I didn't care. Just give me a stick, I'll bite on it and just drill it in my head, whatever. I didn't pray to God or do any of these things. I said I'll get through the pain, and that obviously evolved. But when it first happened, I was kind of indifferent.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine it's a lot coming at you, just
Yeah,
one thing after the other. And then even after surviving something like brain cancer, addiction still had the hold on you, right? And
yeah.
that's something that people don't often understand. Why do you think that struggle continued?
Well, I created a pattern in my life of needing something for something, right? Like I was never okay with just being okay, never okay with being me. Now, alcohol started that for me to keep up my character off the field, right? It was a way for me to lower my inhibitions and I could be that person I thought I wanted to be, and that person I thought you would think that was cool. Then it evolved to Adderall. Adderall, when I first started taking Adderall and got prescribed it, my aha moment, this is what I've been looking for, something that made me smarter, and I needed to use it when I played baseball on the field. So that became needing something, right? Because me alone sober is not good enough. So I need something. And then now I'm in pain, right? So at the time after my treatment and stuff, my mom had told the doctors that I was in recovery for addiction, or I'm an addict, right? And so the doctors were very, very slim with what they were giving me, and it was frustrating because I was in so much physical pain all over, and I was just mad. I was mad because that my mom kind of snitched on me, really, right? And so I was in so much pain. I needed something, so I went to my dealer and got it just 2 weeks after I was done with my treatment, and learned that I was cancer free. And it's insane. The reason why is that I prefer to get high and avoid my problems. That's just I still do. I still do. I would rather. That's how I am. But I just don't act upon it today. And that goes back to honesty and accepting who I am. Right. I have to realize that I love attention. I love attention, and I would rather get high and avoid my problems. That's who I am. And as long as I can acknowledge that, then I can move forward and work on it.
I mean, that's huge, Michael, like, to be able to say that that's the truth, is like you don't wanna deal with problems and you would much rather get high and, you know, have whatever substance that comes your way, take advantage of it. Like, I think that's huge. Most people don't even get to that place where they can just say out loud, "I don't wanna feel pain. I don't wanna deal with problems. I would rather take the risk of killing myself by abusing substances than just be honest."
I think pain is life's great teacher, right? And I think psychological pain of all this and the nerve pain all over my body, all and that suffering, that's all that suffering. It taught me so much and taught me about myself, and I think that's something and when I look back at all these things, I have to look at them from the perspective of what I've gained, not what I've lost. Right? And, on paper, it looks like I lost a lot, but I gained so much more. And I think baseball and having and playing at that level, it gave me this need, I mean, this ability to be resilient. Anti-fragile, I call it. I write about a lot of it, and it's about the bad things that happen to me. That they don't they make me stronger because I can bend and not break, and I think the only way I was able to have this mindset that I do now, and that's why I'm so grateful that I got cancer, and I'm so grateful for the addiction, and I'm so grateful for losing my baseball career, because I would not be this person that I am today. I would still be that selfish jerk. And I think the only way I can get to this point is to go through that stuff.
Yeah. And a really powerful part of your story involves your therapy dog, Lingo. Tell us how Lingo came into your life, how that relationship began to change things for you.
Yeah, so when I was done with my treatment, and I mentioned that moment when I went back to heroin, and my mom found me. She found me passed out in my car, she like had enough of it, rightfully so. And she went back to California, left me alone in Arizona, and finally it got to a point where I couldn't take care of myself anymore. And even after everything they put me through, they let me come back and live with them, which was amazing. I owe my parents everything. And at the time, I tried to go back to treatment, and I was put on a bunch of different medications, and I just really traded my drug dealers for doctors, right? And so I had no spirituality, had no connection. I was just surviving. Right? I was just going through my life turned around a little bit, but I was just surviving. And I started to go through some of these moments in my life where I call them spiritual experiences. One of them was which learned what an a-hole I am. You know what I mean? For once in my life, I saw myself, me, and my actions through the perspective of others. And that was such a powerful moment when I saw that, that's when I knew I was a jerk. I knew I had problems, but I never felt it, right? That 18 inches from your head to your heart, I never felt it. And that was the time I felt it. And around this time when I moved back, my mom worked at the military base. She was one of the big wigs there in Monterey called the Defense Language Institute. And they had recently undergone a project to adopt therapy dog for the soldiers and to be the mascot. And they named him Lingo after language. And to make a long story short, he didn't have a handler assigned to him when they adopted him, so he was kinda struggling with consistency. He would stay on the base on the weekends sometimes and have to spend hours in a crate, or he didn't have that sole owner or consistency, They treated him well, but he just didn't have that. And my mom saw this, and she brought him home to me, and then maybe we could help each other. She had a son home who was hurting, and that's how we bonded. And Lingo was like the first good thing to happen to me, right? And I had all these bad things that we talked about, and then and he was that first good thing to happen to my life. He didn't care about any of that stuff. He didn't care about all that. He just wanted to be with me. And I remember that first time I took him to the park, and I was not caught up in the past anymore. I was not caught worrying about the future. I was present, and Lingo taught me how to be present. And he inspired me to change because I knew if I wanted to be his handler that I had to get better, and that's when I started to really work on myself.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And today you're nearly 5 years sober, and
Yes.
you've built a new life on a farm in Ohio after leaving
Yes.
California. It's a pretty dramatic change of scenery and lifestyle. What led you to make the move?
You know, it's a lot of things, and I wanna clarify, it's a tree farm, not your traditional farm. My hands are too, California pretty to do any real farm work, So, the short end of the story is that my grandfather built this place out here in Northeast Ohio, and he had passed away a few years ago, and so I was able to inherit it and to move out here. But at the time, it was a little bit after the pandemic, and my business, I had a weight training facility and a batting cage in California that I was working at, but it got shut down. And so I was at a turning point in my life where like I said, I was on these medications, and I was just miserable. And I thought, what better chance to start over and make a change. And when I got to Ohio, the first thing I did is I went back to treatment. I got off all those medications. Then I decided to go do an outpatient program, 4-month outpatient program here that I didn't want to do, but I just decided to be honest and commit to it and just do the work, show up every day and do the work. And this place out here, I spent a year, working out, training out here on the property all by myself, and I really learned the difference between isolation and solitude. Being isolated, you can be that way around a bunch of people, right? It's a mindset, but solitude is being by yourself, comfortable with your own thoughts. And I did so much work here. And fortunately, I was in the position to be able to do that because not everybody is, but that helped me so much. And then I was able to branch out into the world. And as I got sober, my purpose started to change, and I learned what I wanted to do, and to start helping other people because helping other people helps me the most of all.
Mm, that's beautiful, and now you're a motivational speaker and the
Yeah.
author of The Disease of Me, sharing your stories with others who may be struggling with addiction, identity, or adversity. When someone hears your story and says they relate to it, what does that mean for you?
That means everything for me because initially, I wrote it because I was, hey, I'm starting this career as a motivational speaker. Like every motivational speaker has a book. That's what I heard. So I'm like, all right, I got to write. But it evolved so much more into that for me, and because I'm just a big believer of having skin in the game. Like I've been to more therapy than I'd like to admit, right? And rarely did I walk out of the therapist's office, with hope for the future. Right, but when I listen to a story of someone overcoming some insurmounting odds, I have hope. I can relate to it, and there's those story because I went through a lot of things that I didn't have a lot of points of reference for. I didn't have a lot of answers, and I kind of was stuck alone with it. But it was always the stories of other people that helped me the most. And so I just really hope that my story can help them is in the way that their stories help me, because that's what it is. We're hardwired to hear stories, and that's the best way that I learn to get better.
Yes, I totally agree, and that's half the reason I do this podcast.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah.
to have everyone share their stories, and if only one person out there hears your story and it makes a difference for them, I can die
Exactly.
happy. So, beautiful,
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly.
Alright, and Michael, this has been an incredible episode, and as we're winding down here, I've got one last question for you. When you look at the younger version of yourself, the 23-year-old who lost baseball and felt like his life was over, what would you want to tell him today?
That's a good question. And I was mentioning that my epilogue of my book is letter to my younger self. And there's so many things that I want to say. Right, first thing I want to do is shake him. Right, I just want to shake. And first I want to say you're an idiot. But the main thing I want to say is that you're good enough. Right, that's just the bottom line is you're good enough, and that and that your failures and your mistakes, you'll learn the most from them. And because of that, you shouldn't be afraid to take risks and be yourself at the risk of of other people's approval, because if the worst thing that can happen is that you fail and you learn something, then why not do it? So that's the best thing that I could say, I guess.
Amazing. Michael, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story so openly. It takes a lot of courage to talk about the hardest chapters of your life, and I know your honesty is going to resonate with a lot of people listening. Really appreciate you coming on the show, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen, for your time. Appreciate it.
If you have ever looked around at your life and thought, this can't be it, you are in the right place. This is Flying Upstream, the podcast for people who refuse to live on autopilot. I'm your host, Kristyn Medeiros. Each week, I sit down with people who questioned the rules, challenged the expectations, and chose a different path. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. We talk about the moments that broke them open, the decisions that scared them, and the lives they built when they stopped doing what they were told and started listening to themselves. If you are done following the crowd and ready to trust your own way forward, stay with me. Let's fly upstream.